She stood at the altar in front of 300 guests, looked directly at her future mother-in-law, and said the 4 words that would break the internet. "You were absolutely right." The entire wedding reception went dead silent. Aaron's face went white. His mother looked like she'd been slapped. But what Grace said next, what she revealed in that moment, it wasn't just about a wedding speech. It was about a secret that would change everything everyone thought they knew about this unsuitable bride. And no, this isn't what you think it is. Because what Grace had been hiding wasn't just confidence. It wasn't just self-worth. It was something that would make Aaron's family realize they'd been judging the wrong person all along, something that would turn their perfect little world completely upside down. Let me take you back to where this all started, with a girl who believed she wasn't enough. Grace had spent her entire life being the other sister. While her older sister Lily was student body president and prom queen, Grace was the one hiding in the library. While her younger sister Emma was posting Instagram selfies that got thousands of likes, Grace was the one behind the camera, taking the photos. It wasn't that Grace was unattractive. She just existed in a different space, curvier than the beauty standards demanded, quieter than her extroverted family expected, more thoughtful than a world that rewarded quick wit and instant charm. By the time she hit 25, Grace had basically accepted her role as the supporting character in everyone else's life story. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, lived in a cozy but tiny apartment, and had exactly 3 close friends who actually saw her for who she was. Dating? Let's just say Grace's romantic history could fit on a Post-it note. A few awkward coffee dates, one relationship that lasted 3 months before he realized they were better as friends, the usual collection of almosts and not quites that leave you wondering if there's something fundamentally wrong with you. So when Aaron Mitchell walked into her life, Grace genuinely thought someone was playing a prank on her. It happened at a coffee shop. Grace was working on a logo design for a local bakery, headphones in, completely absorbed in her work. Someone tapped her shoulder. She looked up to find this gorgeous guy standing there. Tall, athletic build, perfectly styled hair, and a smile that probably most women forget their own names. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but I've been watching you work for the past hour, and I'm fascinated. Are you an artist?" Grace actually looked around to see if he was talking to someone else. "Me? Oh, no, I design logos and stuff, nothing fancy." "Can I see?" And here's the thing that hooked Grace completely. When she showed him her work, Aaron didn't just glance and nod politely. He actually studied it, asked questions, understood the thought process behind her choices. "This is incredible," he said. "You're incredibly talented." No one had ever called Grace incredible at anything. Aaron was unlike anyone Grace had ever met. Confident without being arrogant, successful without being snobby. He ran his own marketing consultancy, drove a nice car, lived in a beautiful downtown loft. But more than that, he seemed genuinely fascinated by Grace. He'd ask about her work, her thoughts, her dreams. He'd listen, actually listen, when she talked about design theory or her favorite books or her secret goal of maybe opening her own studio someday. "You should definitely do that," he'd say. "You're too talented to be hiding behind other people's dreams." For the first time in her life, Grace felt seen, valued, like maybe she wasn't the supporting character after all. They'd been dating for 3 months when Aaron first mentioned his family. "I can't wait for you to meet them," he said over dinner. "They're going to love you." Grace felt her stomach clench. "Tell me about them." "Well, my mom is amazing. She runs the social scene in our neighborhood, charity galas, fundraisers, all that. She's got incredible taste and really high standards, but once you're in her circle, you're family forever." High standards. Grace filed that phrase away in her mental things to worry about folder. "And I have 2 sisters, Madison and Brooke. Madison just finished law school and Brooke is getting her MBA. They're both gorgeous and brilliant and basically perfect." Perfect. Another phrase for the worry folder. "They sound wonderful," Grace lied. The first family dinner was exactly what Grace had expected and somehow worse than she'd feared. Erin's family lived in one of those houses that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. Everything white and gold and carefully arranged. The kind of place where you're afraid to touch anything because it probably costs more than your car. Erin's mother, Patricia, greeted them at the door. She was elegant in that way that comes from money and good genetics, perfectly styled blonde hair, designer clothes that fit like they were made for her, jewelry that caught the light just right. She hugged Erin warmly, then turned to Grace with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You must be Grace. Erin has told us so much about you." The emphasis on "so much" felt pointed. Dinner was a masterclass in subtle social warfare. Every conversation felt like a test Grace didn't know she was taking. "So, Grace, what do you do?" Madison asked, cutting her salmon into perfect little pieces. "How creative," Patricia said. "And do you make good money at that?" Erin jumped in quickly. "Grace is incredibly talented, Mom. You should see her work." "I'm sure it's lovely," Patricia said, in a tone that suggested she was sure of no such thing. Brooke leaned forward with what looked like genuine interest. "Are you planning to expand? Maybe start an agency?" Grace felt a flicker of hope. "Actually, I've been thinking about opening my own studio. Nothing huge, just—" "That's ambitious," Patricia interrupted smoothly. "Small businesses are so risky, especially in creative fields. But it's nice to have hobbies." Hobbies. 20 years of developing her craft, 4 years of art school, a portfolio that landed her clients she was proud of. Hobbies. The evening continued like that. Every accomplishment dismissed. Every dream minimized. Every attempt at conversation somehow redirected to showcase how much more successful, more polished, more everything Erin's sisters were. By the time they left, Grace felt about 2 inches tall. "That went great," Erin said as they drove home. "I can tell they really like you." "Really?" "Because I felt like I was being interviewed for a job I wasn't qualified for." Erin laughed and reached over to squeeze her hand. "You're being too sensitive. That's just how they are with new people. Give them time." Give them time. Grace would spend the next year and a half giving them time. Erin proposed on Grace's 27th birthday. Private dinner at their favorite restaurant, ring hidden in the dessert, the whole romantic setup. The ring was beautiful, a classic solitaire that probably cost more than Grace made in 3 months. But more than the ring, it was the way Erin looked at her when he asked her. "Grace, you've changed my life completely. You've made me see the world differently, appreciate things I never noticed before. Will you marry me?" She said yes before he finished asking. The celebration dinner with Erin's family 2 days later was different. Patricia hugged Erin first, of course. Long, tight, "my baby boy is getting married" hug. Then she turned to Grace. "Congratulations, dear," she said, holding Grace's hand to examine the ring. "It's lovely. Very traditional." Again with the emphasis. Like traditional was code for something else. "We should start planning immediately," Madison announced. "June weddings are gorgeous, but we'll need at least 8 months to pull together something appropriate." "What kind of vision do you have, Grace?" Brooke asked. "Theme, colors, venue?" Grace had actually been thinking about this for years, the way most women do. She'd always imagined something intimate, maybe outdoors. Soft colors, lots of greenery, focus on the meaning of the day rather than the spectacle. "I was thinking something smaller," she began. "Maybe a garden setting, very natural, and—"
"Oh, honey, no," Patricia interrupted with a laugh. "The Mitchell family has certain expectations. This wedding will be a reflection of Erin's standing in the community. We need something elegant, sophisticated."
"I like Grace's ideas," Erin said, but his voice lacked conviction.
"Of course you do, sweetheart," Patricia said, patting his arm. "But trust us on this. We know what works."
And just like that, Grace's wedding became Patricia's wedding, with Grace as a reluctant participant. The next few months were a blur of appointments Grace didn't want, decisions she wasn't allowed to make, and subtle criticisms disguised as helpful suggestions. Dress shopping was the worst. Grace had fallen in love with a dress at the first boutique they visited. It was elegant but not flashy, fitted but not tight, with delicate lace sleeves that made her feel beautiful and confident. It's perfect, she told the consultant. Patricia said, circling Grace like a fashion critic. It's fine. But Grace, honey, are you sure this is the most flattering silhouette for your figure? Your figure? Like Grace's body was a problem to be solved, rather than something to be celebrated. Madison jumped in with fake enthusiasm. What about something with more structure? Something that enhances your assets? Enhances your assets was apparently code for hides your flaws. They spent 4 more hours trying on dresses Patricia chose. Each one made Grace feel worse about herself than the last. Too tight in some places, too loose in others, designed for bodies that weren't hers. This one is much better, Patricia announced, when Grace emerged in a beaded monstrosity that felt like wearing a chandelier. Slimming. The word every curvy woman learns to hate. Grace looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger, someone wearing a costume instead of a wedding dress, someone trying to be something she wasn't. I think I preferred the first one, she said quietly.
Oh, sweetie, Brooke said with fake sympathy. Sometimes what we think we want isn't what's best for us. Trust us, we want you to look your absolute best on Aaron's big day.
Aaron's big day, not their big day. His. The venue, the flowers, the menu, the music, everything got the same treatment. Grace's preferences were acknowledged with patronizing smiles and then diplomatically overruled. Grace wanted daisies, Patricia would tell the florist, but I think roses are more appropriate for the Mitchell family image. Grace mentioned a string quartet, she'd tell the DJ, but we really need something with more energy for our guest list. Bit by bit, Grace watched her dream wedding turn into Patricia's vision of what Aaron's wedding should look like. But the breaking point came at the bridal shower. Patricia insisted on hosting the bridal shower at the country club, of course. Grace spent the morning of the party getting ready with her sisters and her 3 close friends, Maya, Sam, and Jessica. They were doing their best to keep Grace's spirits up, but even they could see she was struggling. "You okay, babe?" Maya asked, helping Grace with her makeup. "You seem tense." "I'm fine," Grace lied. "Just wedding stress, you know." "Your future mother-in-law is," Sam paused, choosing her words carefully, "very involved." "She means well," Grace said automatically. It was what she'd been telling herself for months. Jessica snorted. "Does she? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she's planning her son's wedding to someone who isn't you." That hit too close to home. They arrived at the country club to find the party in full swing. Patricia had invited everyone, Aaron's female relatives, family friends, women from their social circle that Grace had met maybe once or twice. The decorations were beautiful, elegant, expensive. Everything Grace's actual personality wasn't. The game started innocently enough. Traditional bridal shower activities, gift opening, the usual. But as the afternoon wore on and the mimosas flowed, tongues got looser. Grace was opening presents when she heard it. A conversation happening just loud enough for her to catch, but quiet enough that the speakers thought they were being discreet. "She seems sweet," someone was saying. "Oh, she's lovely," came Patricia's voice. "Very down to earth." Down to earth, another code phrase. "It's just such a surprise," the first voice continued. "Aaron usually dates such glamorous women." "Well, everyone has to settle eventually," Patricia replied with a laugh. "The important thing is that she makes him happy." Settle. The word hit Grace like a physical blow. She kept opening presents, kept smiling, kept playing her role. But inside, she was dying. The final blow came during the advice-giving portion of the party. Each guest was supposed to share some wisdom for the bride-to-be. Most of the advice was standard stuff. Communicate openly, never go to bed angry, remember why you fell in love. Then Patricia stood up. "Grace, darling," she began, and the entire room went quiet. "I want to give you some advice that served me well in my 30 years of marriage." Here it comes, Grace thought. "Marriage isn't just about love," Patricia continued, her voice carrying that tone of gentle authority she'd perfected. "It's about partnership. It's about supporting your husband's goals and ambitions. It's about becoming the woman he needs you to be. The woman he needs you to be. Not the woman you are, the woman he needs. Now, I know you come from a different background than our family, Patricia went on, and Grace felt every eye in the room on her. And that's wonderful. Diversity is so important. But marriage means joining a new family, adopting new standards, rising to meet new expectations. Rising to meet new expectations, like Grace was currently failing to meet them. The most important thing you can do as Aaron's wife is to remember that his success is your success. His reputation is your reputation. The choices you make, the way you present yourself, the image you project, it all reflects on him. Patricia smiled warmly, like she'd just given the most helpful advice in the world. I have complete faith that you'll grow into the role beautifully. After all, Aaron wouldn't have chosen you if he didn't see the potential. The potential. Not what Grace already was, but what she might become if she worked hard enough to change everything about herself. The room erupted in polite applause. Grace smiled and nodded and thanked Patricia for her wisdom. But inside, something had shifted. That night, Grace lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Patricia's words over and over. Settle. Potential. The woman he needs you to be. Was that really what love looked like? Was that what she'd signed up for? She thought about Aaron, about the man who'd seemed so fascinated by her art, her thoughts, her dreams. When had he stopped asking about her work? When had he started agreeing with his family's suggestions instead of defending her choices? When had she become a project instead of a person? But then she thought about the alternative, going back to her old life, being alone again, being the sister who never got married, the friend who couldn't make it work, the woman who wasn't quite enough for anyone. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe this was what love looked like for someone like Grace. Maybe she should be grateful that someone like Aaron was willing to take a chance on her. Maybe settling was the best she could hope for. 3 weeks before the wedding, Grace made a decision that would change everything. She was sitting in her apartment, supposedly addressing wedding invitations, when her phone rang. It was her grandmother, her dad's mom, calling from the assisted living facility. "Gracie, honey, how's the wedding planning going?" "It's going," Grace said, not trusting herself to say more. "You don't sound very excited for a bride-to-be." Grace's grandmother had always been able to see right through her. "I'm just stressed, Nai. Lots of details to manage." There was a pause. Then her grandmother said something that hit Grace like lightning. "You know, when I married your grandfather, his family thought I wasn't good enough either." Grace sat up straighter. Her grandmother had never talked about this before. "What do you mean?" "Oh, they had all sorts of opinions. I was too short, too loud, too Chinese for their taste. They wanted him to marry someone more suitable." "What did you do?" "I married him anyway," her grandmother said with a laugh. "But not before I made sure of one thing." "What?" "I made sure he didn't think I wasn't good enough. Because, honey, if the man you're marrying doesn't think you're perfect exactly as you are, then you're marrying the wrong man." Grace felt tears starting to fall. "But what if I'm not perfect? What if I really do need to change?" "Gracie, listen to me. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. Anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve you. And anyone who tries to change you doesn't love you. They love their idea of who you could become." After they hung up, Grace sat in her apartment for hours thinking. She thought about Aaron, about how he used to ask about her art and now barely noticed when she completed a new project, about how he used to call her incredible and now mostly just agreed with his family's critiques. She thought about Patricia's advice about becoming the woman he needs you to be, and realized she couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked what kind of woman she wanted to be. She thought about the wedding dress hanging in her closet, the one Patricia had chosen, the one that made Grace feel like she was wearing a costume. And then she made a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. She wasn't going to cancel the wedding, but she wasn't going to disappear into it either. If she was going to marry Aaron, she was going to do it as herself, the real Grace, the one who was curvy and quiet and thoughtful and brilliant in her own way. The one who deserved to be loved exactly as she was. The next morning, Grace went back to the bridal shop. Not the fancy one Patricia had chosen, but a small boutique in the arts district run by a woman who specialized in custom designs. "I need a dress," Grace told her. "Something that celebrates who I am, not who everyone thinks I should be." And that's when Grace discovered something about herself she'd never known. She wasn't just talented at graphic design. She had an eye for fashion, too. A vision for what looked good, what felt right, what made a statement. Working with the designer, Grace created something extraordinary. A dress that was elegant but not apologetic, fitted but not hiding, beautiful in a way that was uniquely, unmistakably hers. But the dress was just the beginning. The morning of the wedding, Grace woke up feeling different. Not nervous, not scared, not desperate to please everyone. Calm, centered, ready. Her sisters and friends came over to help her get ready, expecting to find the anxious, people-pleasing Grace they'd been worried about for months. Instead, they found someone they barely recognized. "Grace," Maya said carefully, "you seem different." "I feel different," Grace replied, and she meant it. She did her own makeup, not the professional look Patricia had booked, but something that looked like her. She did her own hair, not the elaborate updo the stylist had planned, but loose waves that felt natural and beautiful. And when she put on the dress, everything clicked into place. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered. "Grace, you look like myself," Grace finished. "I look like myself." At the church, Grace could feel the surprise rippling through the crowd as she walked down the aisle. This wasn't the subdued, appropriately modest bride they'd been expecting. This was a woman who knew exactly who she was and wasn't apologizing for it. Aaron's face when he saw her was complicated. Surprise, confusion, and something that might have been admiration, all mixed together. The ceremony was beautiful. Traditional vows, classical music, everything Patricia had planned. But somehow, with Grace being fully herself, it felt different, more real, more meaningful. And then came the reception. Patricia had planned every detail, of course. Elegant dinner, tasteful speeches from family members, dancing to an approved playlist. But when it came time for the bride and groom to say a few words, Grace did something no one was expecting. She took the microphone first. "I want to thank everyone for being here today," she began, and her voice was steady and clear. "This has been an interesting journey." She looked out at the crowd, at Patricia's carefully curated guest list, at all the people who'd spent months making her feel like she wasn't quite good enough for this moment. "A few months ago, someone told me I wasn't wedding material," Grace continued. "And you know what? They were absolutely right." The room went dead silent. Aaron's face went white. Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. But Grace wasn't done. "I'm not wedding material. I'm not someone who disappears into her husband's dreams and ambitions. I'm not someone who changes herself to fit other people's expectations of what a wife should be." She paused, letting that sink in. "I'm Grace. I'm a brilliant graphic designer who's about to open her own studio. I'm someone who thinks deeply, loves fiercely, and creates beautiful things. I'm someone who looks amazing in yellow, my favorite color, even though some people think it's not my shade." A few people in the crowd started to smile. Grace's friends were beaming. Even some of Aaron's relatives looked impressed. "I'm marrying Aaron today not because I need him to complete me, but because I choose him. And I really hope, that he's choosing the real me too." She turned to Aaron, who was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Aaron, I love you, but I need to know. Are you marrying Grace, the graphic designer who dreams big and laughs loud and takes up space in the world? Or are you marrying some version of me that exists only in your family's expectations?" The entire reception held its breath. Aaron looked at Grace, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time in months. And then he started to smile. "I'm marrying Grace," he said, taking the microphone. "The woman who made me see art everywhere I looked. The woman who challenges me to think differently. The woman who's been trying to shrink herself to fit into our world when our world should have been expanding to include her." He turned to face his family, and his voice got stronger. "Mom, I love you, but Grace doesn't need to become anyone other than who she already is. She's perfect." Patricia's face went through about 6 different emotions in the span of 5 seconds. "And if anyone here thinks they're settling by marrying Grace," Aaron continued, "then they clearly don't know Grace." The crowd erupted, not polite applause, genuine, enthusiastic cheering. But the best part? The part that would make Grace's speech go viral and inspire millions of women around the world? What she said next. "There's one more thing," Grace said, taking the microphone back. The crowd settled down, sensing something big was coming. "When I was little, I used to think love meant making yourself smaller so other people would be comfortable. I thought being worthy meant changing everything about yourself that made you, you." She looked directly at Patricia, but her voice was kind, not vindictive. "But I learned something important these past few months. The right people don't need you to shrink. They don't need you to hide your dreams or apologize for your talents or pretend to be less than you are." She paused, smiling at her own family, at her friends, at the few people in Aaron's family who'd always been kind. The right people see you exactly as you are and think, "How did I get so lucky?" Another pause, and then Grace dropped the bombshell that no one saw coming. Which brings me to some news I want to share with all of you. Grace reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. 3 months ago, I entered a design competition. It was for emerging artists, and I honestly didn't think I had a chance. But I submitted my portfolio anyway, because Aaron, before all this wedding planning started, told me I was too talented to keep hiding. Aaron's eyes widened. He had no idea where this was going. "Last week, I got a call. I won. Not just one, I got the grand prize." She opened the envelope and pulled out a check. $50,000 and a guaranteed contract with one of the biggest marketing firms in the country. The crowd gasped. Patricia's mouth actually fell open. "But here's the really crazy part," Grace continued, and now she was grinning. "The firm that sponsored the contest, the one that's about to hire me, it's Morrison Creative Group." More gasps. Morrison Creative was huge. National campaigns, Fortune 500 clients, the kind of agency that graphic designers dreamed of working for. "So it turns out," Grace said, looking directly at Patricia, "I wasn't wedding material. I was career material, CEO material, success story material." She turned back to the crowd. "I start Monday. My first project is rebranding a major tech company, and my starting salary is, well, let's just say it's more than Aaron makes." Aaron started laughing, not upset laughing, but pure joy and pride. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "Because I wanted to see if you'd marry Grace the waitress or Grace the successful designer," she said. "I wanted to know if you loved me or just felt sorry for me." Aaron pulled her into a kiss that made the whole crowd cheer. But Grace still wasn't done. "One more thing," she said. "Patricia, you said I needed to learn to become the woman Aaron needs me to be." Patricia nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. "Well, it turns out the woman Aaron needs is exactly who I've always been. Someone who dreams big, works hard, and refuses to make herself smaller for anyone else's comfort." Grace looked out at the crowd one more time. "So here's to everyone who's ever been told they're not enough, not right, not suitable. You are, exactly as you are. The right person will see it, and the right opportunities will find you. You just have to stop shrinking." The crowd erupted again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just celebration, it was recognition. Every woman in that room who'd ever been made to feel too much or not enough was standing and cheering. Someone in the back was recording on their phone. Within hours, Grace's speech would be uploaded to TikTok, then Twitter, then everywhere else. By the next morning, hashtag Stop Shrinking was trending worldwide. The video of Grace's speech exploded across the internet. Not just the wedding part, the whole story. The systematic attempts to change her, the advice about becoming someone else, the moment she decided to reclaim herself. Women everywhere started sharing their own stories. Stories about being told they were too much or not enough. Stories about shrinking themselves to fit other people's expectations. Stories about finding the courage to take up space. Grace became an overnight sensation, but not in the way she'd ever imagined. She didn't want to be famous, she wanted to be herself. The job at Morrison Creative was everything she dreamed of and more. Her first campaign won awards, her second got her promoted. Within a year, she was leading her own team. Aaron thrived too. Turns out, being married to someone who challenged him made him better at everything. His business grew, his confidence soared. He started taking creative risks he'd never dared to take before. And his family? Well, that's where the real twist comes in. 6 months after the wedding, Patricia invited Grace to lunch, just the two of them. Grace almost said no. She'd been perfectly polite to Aaron's family since the wedding, but she hadn't forgotten the months of subtle undermining. But something made her say yes. They met at Patricia's favorite restaurant, the kind of place where lunch costs more than most people spend on groceries. Patricia was nervous. Grace had never seen her nervous before. "Grace," Patricia began, then stopped, started again. "Grace, I owe you an apology." Grace waited. "I spent so much time trying to make you into someone else that I never bothered to see who you actually were." She paused, fidgeting with her napkin. "The truth is, I was threatened by you from the very beginning." Grace blinked. "Threatened? By me?" "You were everything I'd never had the courage to be," Patricia said quietly. "Creative, independent, willing to take risks. I spent my whole life being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect hostess. I never once asked myself what I wanted to be." Grace felt her anger starting to dissolve into something more complicated. "When Aaron brought you home, I saw this confident, talented woman who didn't need anyone's approval to know her worth. And instead of admiring that, I tried to tear it down. Because if you could be yourself and still be loved, what did that say about all the years I spent being someone else?" Patricia looked up, and Grace was shocked to see tears in her eyes. "I wasted 30 years of my life trying to be perfect instead of trying to be real. And I almost convinced you to do the same thing." They sat in silence for a moment. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know, watching you at that wedding, hearing you speak your truth, it changed something in me." "What do you mean?" Patricia smiled, the first genuine smile Grace had ever seen from her. "I enrolled in art classes, painting. I'd always wanted to try, but I thought it was frivolous. Turns out I'm not terrible at it." Grace started to smile too. "And I told Harold, my husband, that I'm done hosting parties just to impress people I don't even like. From now on, we're only entertaining people who actually matter to us." How did he take that? He said it was about time. Apparently, he's been waiting 30 years for me to stop performing and start living. Patricia reached across the table and took Grace's hand. "You saved my son's marriage before it even started, but more than that, you saved mine too." Grace's story went viral because it touched something universal, the feeling of not being enough, the pressure to change yourself to fit other people's expectations, the courage it takes to say, "This is who I am, and I'm not apologizing for it." But here's what most people missed about Grace's story. It wasn't just about standing up to mean in-laws or refusing to shrink herself. It was about recognizing her own worth before anyone else did. Grace didn't wait for Aaron to defend her. She didn't wait for his family to accept her. She didn't wait for permission to be herself. She decided she was enough, exactly as she was. And once she believed it, everyone else had no choice but to believe it too. The job, the success, the viral fame, none of that made Grace worthy. She was always worthy. She just finally started acting like it. Today, Grace runs her own design studio. It's called Stop Shrinking Creative, and her waiting list is 6 months long. She specializes in helping small businesses owned by women tell their stories authentically. Aaron supports her completely. Their marriage is stronger than ever because it's built on the foundation of two whole people choosing each other, not one person trying to complete the other. And Patricia? Patricia had her first art show last month. Grace designed the promotional materials for free. Because sometimes the people who try to shrink you are just people who forgot how to grow. And sometimes showing them how to expand is the greatest gift you can give. If you're watching this and you've been shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be, stop. Right now, today. You are not too much. You are not enough. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. The right people will see it. The right opportunities will find you. You just have to stop shrinking long enough to let them.